your friend in Central Illinois. WHOW.
Top of the morning. Thanks for being with us. I'm your host today, Seth Lawrence. The WHOW Morning Show streams to Facebook and YouTube. It's brought to you by Peterson Insurance, your Pekin Insurance agent in Clinton. On the Zoom call with us today, Candace Summers with the McLean County Museum of History. Good morning, Candace. How are you today?
Good. How are you, Seth?
I'm doing well. Thanks for asking. Thanks for making time for us as always. It's good to have you on the program. And we were catching up before we got started. A new exhibit coming to the museum in September. What's this exhibit all about?
Yeah. So this exhibit is a long time coming. We actually had this idea for the exhibit all the way back in 2011. And on Bloomington's west side was a plant called UNARCO. And that plant made asbestos products. And it was a big employer for a very long time. It basically took over some of the footprint of the old Chicago and Alton railroad shops on Bloomington's west side, which a lot of listeners are probably familiar where the old roundhouse and everything was on the west side. And similar to the radium dial factory, up near Ottawa, it was a similar situation where the company lied to its employees about the dangers of asbestos. And many of the workers who were employed there died because of asbestos exposure or are still fighting claims to this day. And the UNARCO factory has been closed for decades.
Wow.
And so one of our board members at that time, Mark Dunn, he actually brought this to the museum and said, hey, I think this is a story that we need to tell, that we need to tell the story of the workers and the lies that the company gave to the community too. And we didn't think it would be like a huge blockbuster exhibit, but we're like, this is a story that we need to tell. And so we started digging into that story. Well, then in 2013, as we were getting ready to kind of finalize things, the museum embarked on a capital campaign to redo our permanent exhibits. So it got put on the back burner. And then in 2019, we're like, okay, those exhibits are done. We can start this again. Well, then we started having roof issues at the museum. And then, of course, COVID happened. And so It's been a long time coming. And so now, we're finally ready to debut this exhibit to tell that important story and to share the story of all those individuals and their experiences and what the company did. And also to educate people about asbestos. Like, a lot of products used to have asbestos in it because it was a fire retardant. Well, we learned that if you breathe those fibers in, if you come into contact with them, it will cause cancer and you will most likely die from it. So we think this is a really important exhibit and a story that needs to be told.
And I wondered when you said that, it's been a long time coming. I wondered what you meant by that. So where does this, how do you tell the story? How do you present it? And not to give away too many details, but what are some of the, stories that will be in this exhibit, Candace?
Yeah, so we worked with Bloomington attorney James Walker, who spearheaded many of the lawsuits against asbestos companies and their suppliers across the country. And so he came on board as an advisor, and he shared depositions, which were from the witnesses and also the employees who were affected by the asbestos poisoning. He shared documents and court exhibits that he gathered over 30 years while representing local workers and their families who suffered and died from asbestos-related diseases. Now, it's not just the workers themselves. Even their families were sickened by this. There are stories of, wives who wash their husband's clothes dying from mesothelioma and asbestos exposure. I remember one of our museum volunteers, she worked at UNARCO. She didn't work in the actual plant, but every day she had to go from her office through the plant to get to the lunchroom. And even she had a claim from such minimal exposure as that. Because when you were in the plant, from the depositions and from workers' reports, it was like it was snowing in there. The asbestos was just floating through the air.
Hmm.
And there was no way you wouldn't have breathed any of that in. And the quote safety gear they gave their workers was nothing. Or workers had to make their own masks out of whatever clothing they got. There was hardly any protection offered to them. And then, of course, again, much like the radium girls, they had company doctors who would examine the workers and then lie to them
Oh my gosh.
about the
Wow.
effects that were happening to them. They lied and they hid it for decades.
Wow.
And so this exhibit is going to tell the stories of the worker, you know, what the company did, and educate the public about why tragedies like this should never have happened.
I bet this is going to be a well-received exhibit.
Yeah, I think so. I think it'll be a very powerful exhibit. And again, so many people don't know like what all asbestos was in. Like a lot of older homes have asbestos siding on them, you know. And again, if you leave that kind of stuff alone, it's not dangerous. But if you break it up, if it becomes damaged, then that's when it becomes dangerous. I was looking through a list of products that we display in the exhibit, not the actual products, but like their labels, because obviously no one is going to have an exhibit like this with an actual asbestos in it. Okay. But pictures of products, cigarette filters used to have asbestos in the filters for certain brands. They used to put asbestos as a fire retardant on children's pajamas and toys. So, I mean, it's just mind-boggling how this product, even though it was revolutionary at, you know, keeping people safe as far as fire was concerned, how dangerous it was. I mean, just like lead paint, you know, being, you know, something that's in a lot of older homes. And how, you know, if people are exposed to it, especially young children, how bad it is for you. So I think it's going to be an exhibit that people really are going to want to see, and they're really going to learn a lot from. And this exhibit will be up for several years as well. So it's not like you have to come like, you know, as soon as it opens. It will be here. And we hope that a lot of people do come and learn from it.
You beat me to the punch there. I was going to ask, how long is it going to be up for? When do you anticipate it being ready to be out on display?
Yeah, we will have our public opening of the exhibit on Saturday, September 7th at 1:30 p.m. Our guest curator, Mike Matika, will be doing a program that afternoon to kind of kick off, and he'll be talking about developing that exhibit with our museum curator, Susan Hartzold. And Mike has a particularly good perspective because he's involved in labor activism. He's been in labor unions for a very long time. And this is something, you know, that unions have fought against for decades, was, you know, workers' rights, worker safety. And obviously what the company was doing definitely violated many, many safety laws when it came to worker safety.
Sure. So look forward to that. Did I miss anything in the conversation there, Candace, that you wanted to put out there for us?
No, there's so many stories that people will learn in the exhibit. And it's something that's just going to be like, just blow your mind. Like, how, you know, could something of like this happen? You know, when we learned from other work-related tragedies like the Radium Girls, how companies just continued to lie and jeopardize their workers' health and safety. So I think people will really find this an interesting exhibit.
Candace Summers, McLean County Museum of History, is my guest on the Zoom call here this morning. Candace, I know that another program of yours is celebrating a very special milestone this fall. What's going on?
So it is getting to be that time of year again for the Evergreen Cemetery Walk. And this year is the big 30 years. We've been doing this event, started all the way back in 1995. It's hard to believe it's been 30 years. It's hard to believe that the entire time I've worked at the museum, over 19 years, I've been a part of this event, and all the stories that we continue to find never ceases to amaze me. It's just wow. That's all I can say is it's just wow.
Yeah. So do we know the story this year? Are you ready to tell us about that?
Yeah, I can absolutely introduce everyone to the characters. So this year, again, we have a couple brand new characters, but we're bringing back some of our fan favorites that we've seen in other years before. So I'll introduce you to this year's new characters. There are visiting voices, and for those who don't know, a visiting voice is some other McLean County resident that is buried in another McLean County cemetery, and we quote invite them to Evergreen Cemetery to share their story. We started doing this because we knew there were an awful lot of stories out there that we'd never be able to tell because they're not buried in Evergreen Cemetery. So we started this back in 2020 and it's been well received. And so this year, in honor of the 90th anniversary of Steak and Shake, we are bringing Gus and Edith Belt, the founders of Steak and Shake, as our visiting voices here. And they are going to be sharing how Steak and Shake came to be, how they turned a combination gas station restaurant into the successful nationwide chain that they grew, and that everybody has probably had a Steak and Shake milkshake once or twice in their lives. So we're really excited to be sharing the Belts story. We're also going to be telling the story of June Crandall. June, which is a man. He was a labor unionist, an activist, and also a socialist. You have to whisper when you say that as well. It makes it more dramatic.
Okay.
And June was a coal miner at the McLean County Coal Company. And he was very active in promoting workplace safety because, as you probably know, coal mines are a dangerous place, particularly back in the late 19th century, early 20th century, when there were hardly any laws, very few safety protections, very few laws governing workers' rights. You could expect to be working 10 to 12-hour days, 6 to 7 days a week. And of course, you had to worry about cave-ins and black damp and all these other things. And so June very much with the miners union at Bloomington's coal mine promoted workplace safety. June also, unfortunately, had family members who died in the Cherry mine accident. And he visited Cherry after the mine accident in November of 1909 and came back to Bloomington and told people about what he saw and how that tragedy happened. And again, it lit a fire in him to become even bigger champion for workers' rights and workplace safety. So he's going to share his very interesting story, which tragically his life was cut short by a workplace accident of all things. We're also going to hear from Sophia Huggins and Madame Annette. So Madame Annette, we don't know a whole lot about. She was a newspaper reporter for the Daily Bulletin, which was the evening newspaper in Bloomington at one time. And she interviewed a lot of the movers and shakers of Bloomington, but she also, interviewed the everyday people. Although I don't think Sophia Huggins would consider herself an everyday person because she was a clairvoyant. She told people's futures. She lifted the veil and saw into the future. And so people, rich, poor, all walks of life sought Sophia for her advice. Was she right? Who can say how often she was? But in any case, she has an interesting story to share, and we're bringing those two back from when they were first featured in 2012. June Crandall was first featured in 2006. Our fan favorite this year that was truly voted on by fans of the Cemetery Walk is Angie Milner. Milner, that last name may sound familiar to people, because that is the Milner of Milner Library. Angie Milner was Illinois State University's first permanent full-time librarian. She was hired in 1890 to catalog 4,000 books who were spread across multiple smaller libraries on campus. And she did such a good job that they decided to keep her on. And not only was she an excellent librarian who also promoted the expansion of the library to offer more resources to students, but she developed curriculum that was implemented nationwide, was beloved by students. And then, of course, after her death, when they opened a new library, that was the first one named Milner Library. And of course, the one today is named Milner Library. So she is going to share with us her story about all that she did to improve the education of students at Illinois State University.
Very good. Very good. Well, Candace, I appreciate you introducing the characters to us. I wish I could ask a few more questions, but I need to take a break. Maybe next month we'll do more on the cemetery walk, and I know we'll do even more as we get into September as well. What's the best way?
Yeah.
What's the best way for folks to learn about all things McLean County Museum of History?
You can find us on social media, on Facebook and Instagram, but always our website, mchistory.org, for all things McLean County and local history related.
That is Candace Summers, McLean County Museum of History, our guest on the Zoom call this morning. More to come with Candace on the morning show.
WHOW.
Your Farm Bureau membership.
Let's check the markets now on the RFD Radio Network. I'm Jim Taylor. Lower across the board for corn, beans, and Chicago wheat. September corn down 7 3/4, 3.98 1/4. December corn down 7 1/4, 4.13 1/2. March corn 4.28 down 7 1/4. August beans down 15 1/2, $11 1/2. September beans down 18 1/2, 10.56. And November new crop is down 19 1/4, 10.60 1/4. September wheat 5.33 1/2 down 4 1/4. December wheat down 4 3/4, 5.57 3/4. August bean meal 3.49.90 down 2.50. August bean oil 45.19 down 62 cents. Livestock market August feeders 258.32 down 30 cents. August live cattle down 42 cents, 188.47. August lean hogs 93.27 down a nickel. Energy market September crude oil 77.25 down $1.03.
4-H means a year of fun and work, culminated with displaying their exhibits and animals at this year's fairs. Maroa Ag, your growing partner every step of the way, wants to thank the area 4-Hers for bringing their exhibits and activities to be judged in this year's fairs. You've made all of us in the area proud of your accomplishments. A tip of the hat to our 4-Hers from everyone at Maroa Ag, north of Maroa, your growing partner every step of the way.
Warner Hospital and Health Services expanded emergency room means big hospital tech, small hospital caring. When you need ER care, make it Warner Hospital and Health Services in Clinton. Find out how their expanded ER can help you by clicking their icon at DeWittDailyNews.com.
Rainey Miller from Run Deep Coaching. Take your power back. I do holistic personal and business coaching. My service is virtual, so we can visit no matter where you are. Find out more by clicking my icon at DeWittDailyNews.com. That's DeWittDailyNews.com.
Your friend in Central Illinois, WHOW.
Once again, and good morning. Thanks for being with us. I'm your host today, Seth Lawrence. The WHOW Morning Show streams to Facebook and YouTube. It's brought to you by Peterson Insurance, your Pekin Insurance agent in Clinton. My guest on the Zoom call today, Candace Summers, McLean County Museum of History. And Candace, I know you've got some things coming up at the museum. What's on the calendar here as we talk this morning?
Yeah, so on Saturday, August 3rd, we have our next knit in that will be at Illinois Art Station. So if you've never been to one of our knit ins, it's open to knitters and crocheters, not just knitters. A lot of us do both. And what we do is we get together quarterly where we create items for groups in need. And so this time around, we are, even though it's not cold yet, we're always thinking ahead, because you need to get stuff ready for the winter. When it is cold, you need it. We're making hats and scarves for students in our local schools, D87 and Unit 5, that will be distributed through the Promise Council. And each school has a Promise Council where it helps students get what they need. It helps support student activities. And so we're really excited to be able to partner with the Promise Council again to make hats and scarves to keep kiddos warm. A lot of times, you know, when you're a kid, you lose your hat, you lose your scarf, you lose your mittens, and then it's like, uh-oh, it's cold outside. I'm waiting at the bus stop.
Right.
I need something. And so a lot of times people from the Promise Council will just hang out where the kids get picked up, and they'll pass out the hats and scarves as kiddos need them. And so we're really excited to be able to help fulfill this need again. I already have quite the stockpile of hats and scarves at the museum already, but I know more will come through. And we're really excited that Illinois Art Station is hosting us so that we can hang out there, enjoy some art, and enjoy some knitting and crocheting.
Sure. How do you get connected with these groups, Candace? I think I've asked this before, but remind us how you get connected with some of these folks.
So I myself am a knitter. I'm a very poor crocheter, but I do try. So I can definitely whip up a hat or a scarf in knitting. And so back in 2012, I learned about knit-ins that are done at the World War II Museum in New Orleans. And I said, hey, why can't we do one of those here? That would be a lot of fun. And they specifically knit scarves, crochet scarves for veterans, which we do too sometimes, but I wanted to do more. I knew there were more people in the community that could benefit from any item that we could make: blankets, hats, scarves. We've made fidget cuffs for people in memory care units. Gosh, we've made so many things over the years, but I just started connecting with local knitters and crocheters because there's lots of individual groups that get together and knit. There's 2 yarn shops in town and they help spread the word. And it's just grown over the years. I probably have about 120 people on my list. Not that we all get together because some people have moved away, but they still will mail me things, drop off things. So you don't have to come to the event if you want to help. You can bring stuff to the museum that you've made, and I will get it to the places that we have identified as our charities. So it's a lot of fun.
Sure. Very good. Well, Candace, I apologize for this. I have to let us go. We've talked so much about the cemetery walk and the new exhibit from the first segment. I cut it short a little bit on the second segment here, but where do folks go for all things McLean County Museum of History?
You go to our website, makehistory.org, where you can see information about upcoming programs, and you can also see us on Facebook and Instagram.
That is Candace Summers, McLean County Museum of History, my guest on the Zoom call this morning. Network news on the way.